Although Columbus is looking for a new way to sail to India, what he does instead is finally and forever connect the two halves of the world. The voyage is not just significant in American history. As you'll see, it's a pivotal event in all of human history. Nothing will ever be the same. The end of the Ice Age marooned large pockets of humanity on separate sides of the globe for over 15,000 years. Now, that's all about to change.
The voyage of Christopher Columbus in 1492 is taught as one of the most significant events in American history. In fact, it's one of the most significant events in all of human history. Prior to that voyage, the great world zones had existed largely in isolation. By crossing the Atlantic, Columbus opens up the vast American world zone, these two enormous continents of North and South America, with the millions of people that are living there, the resources that are available. And for the first time, people living in Eurasia become aware of this other part of the world. Until the voyage of Columbus, these people may as well have been living on different planets, so isolated were they.
A trade network that started with the first civilizations, connected Europe, Asia, and Africa, now reaches across the Atlantic. In this vast new global network, new hubs will form. And once again, power will shift.
For most of the last 2,000 years, Europe hasn't been that important. Then we get the age of Columbus, and what do you know? This is exactly the time where we see the rise of the West. This is when the West starts taking over, when it gets itself smack bang in the middle of the biggest exchange network the world has ever seen.
Now, foods that had been isolated on disconnected continents begin to move around the world. Maize from the Americas shows up in Egypt and China. Potatoes from the Andes prove perfectly suited to the soils of Ireland and Russia. The old Fertile Crescent grains, like wheat, begin to feed the Americas. New foods mean more calories, more energy. Within 3 centuries of Columbus's voyage, the population of the world will more than double to 900 million. But the unequal hands dealt to the two hemispheres now play out in a deadly climax. European conquistadors, inheritors of the agriculture and animals of the Fertile Crescent, and the trade spread along the vast networks of the Old World, come bearing guns, riding horses, and carrying infectious diseases. The result, slaughter. In the years following Columbus's first voyage, 95% of the native population in the Americas will die from European guns and germs. Once the hemispheres are connected, nothing can ever be the same. Take the incredible story of sugar. Chemically, it's the only source of fuel for our brains, a substance we are programmed to crave. Raw sugar comes mostly from sugar cane. Once again, a grass will play a central role in the story of mankind. First cultivated more than 6,000 years ago in Asia, Europeans discovered sugar in the Middle East during the Crusades and carried it home. Europe was hooked. But there's virtually nowhere in Europe where sugar can grow.
Then we have Christopher Columbus and the discovery of the New World. And the Spanish conquistadors, yes, they initially are very interested in the gold and the silver, but really, they just want to make it rich. They don't care how they're going to make it rich. And once the gold and the silver has been looted, the next step is to open sugar plantations. The Spanish themselves don't want to work in the sugar plantations. They start looking around for a new labor force. And over on the other side of the Atlantic, there is a place where they can buy slaves. And if we look at the history of slavery, the #1 destination of slaves from Africa are sugar plantations. So the history of sugar shapes the development of history through the Middle East, through the Crusades, through the conquest of Mesoamerica, and even the history of slavery from Africa to the Americas.
In the year 1700, mankind has hit a wall. Most humans continue to live simple lives, more like our ancient ancestors than our own.
When you think back to the world in 1700, most people were farmers, most people practiced small-scale subsistence agriculture, most manufacturing was done in workshops.
In 1700, it takes over a year for cargo and information to circle the planet, longer than it would take us today to get to Mars. What's holding us back is how we power our lives. In Egypt of 2000 BC, 90% of all work was done by human muscle, with animals kicking in the rest. By 1700 in Europe, the majority of work, 70%, is still driven by human muscle. Muscle power alone can't clear the path to the modern age. But there's a breakthrough hidden deep within the earth.